Welcome to Playing with Fire, the podcast for people who are ready to custom build their love.
We're talking about non-monogamy, however you design it, as an individuation opportunity.
Want to leave the default and make your life spectacularly you? You're in the right place. Hey there.
Hey.
So we're recording an episode today that we've been wanting to release for a while, but it had to wait. It had to wait because the person that I talked to is in high demand. This interview was done with Jessica Fern, who wrote Polysecure.
So that's exciting.
It is. So it's exciting for me for a few reasons. One, Jessica is an amazing human being. She's a lovely person. Also, she's written a book that's had a really big impact on the non-monogamy world. So yay, I love that. And because attachment theory, while it is not the only theory that I work from, it is, it comes out of the psychodynamic world, right? So it fits in to all of the theories that I like to apply in my own life and in my clients' experiences. It fits right in. And I'm excited and I can't wait to play the interview. So we're not going to talk about this too long, but I did want to preface just a little bit and say, this isn't an interview about, hey, what's attachment theory? That's not where I started because, well, she's written a lot about that. She's talked a lot about that. Go get the book if you haven't read the book.
Get the book. This is an interview.
And also because attachment theory, I think more and more of us, we understand the basics of it. Like you can learn the basics of it from reading a few charts and getting some Instagram information. So I know that most of you have probably already categorized yourself to some degree along the quadrants. Are you more anxious? Are you more avoidant? Do you have secure attachment or do you have earned secure attachment? There are all these things that we can talk about. Now, you have identified yourself as being primarily
avoidant.
Yeah. And if you were to talk about how your avoidance shows up in non-monogamy, what would you say is one of the things that one of the ways it disrupts your experience?
Well, it just by encouraging me not to connect to partners or people who might be partners, like to isolate myself essentially by avoiding.
Right. So sometimes people talk about attachment styles and non-monogamy, and they only focus on how it interferes with the coupling. Like how you and I might struggle in our coupled non-monogamy, right?
Sure,
like here we are a couple and then there's other people. But let's just break all that down because we're people, we're non-monogamous people. And what I hear you saying, and this is, it's what I imagined you'd say, your avoidant tendencies have actually been part of what, if people have been listening along, your hesitancy to put yourself out there.
They interfere with my ability, not my tendency to pursue relationships. I don't think it's capacity because my capacity is beyond my attachment style, but my tendency to
your comfort zone.
Definitely outside my comfort zone. Yeah.
Okay. And so I have tended towards an anxious style, but really disorganized. The amount of trauma history I have, it makes sense. I actually kind of flip back and forth between avoidant and anxious, and it's taken a long time. But in my relationship with you, even though it started off disastrously, eventually we got to a spot where I consistently feel and test as having earned secure attachment, which honestly blows my mind. And it's just a wonderful reminder. The first time I learned about attachment styles, nobody told me how mutable they were, how changeable, how workable their tendencies, their preferences for ways that you move in the world and in relationships. They're not set in stone, and it's a theory. It's not, and it's not the only theory on how human relationships work. So I like the way you just approach that. Like you're thinking about how your avoidant tendency, and you happen to enact that in a way that moves you into isolation.
Yep.
And my anxious history has moved me to overcare, overfunction in my relationships, especially in my long term. The longer term the relationship is, the more that tends to come forward. But at the end of the day, we have been able to patiently over the course of a long time build, earn, secure attachment. And as as we've done that, one of the core questions that I find myself asking when we do our relationship agreement process is, do we want to continue being each other's attachment figures?
Right.
And
Okay.
you can have multiple attachment figures, and I have had others. Right now, you are my only attachment figure currently.
What you're
That's
saying,
just where I am
there
in
are
my,
other kinds of relationships.
but there are other kinds of relationships, and it would be okay if we
Mhm.
decided not to do that part. That would be a legitimate choice. So I think that there's a lot of emphasis placed on, like, let's get to secure attachment. Let's make sure that everybody feels secure. It's it is one option among many, because the baseline for me, and Jessica and I get into this more in depth, is, am I secure in myself? Can I
Mm.
provide my own safe haven? Am I actually which isn't the same as I'm isolated. When you were 18, did you throw a lot of rocks into the river and sing Simon and Garfunkel songs?
River, woods, yes, there was much rock throwing,
Right.
much solitary rock throwing
To the tune of I Am
to
a
the
Rock
tune
and
of,
Island.
yeah, right.
Right.
Yeah,
Men of a certain age, right? So that that being your tendency, it's not the only strategy you have
right.
in
Right.
relationships. And my tendencies are not the only strategies I have. What I like about the what Jessica lays out in Polysecure is it offers you a framework to think about relationships. And we also got into talking about her upcoming book. So she also released a workbook on Polysecure, but now there's another book coming out. It should come out in the fall. And that book, Polywise, really takes things to another level and actually is very aligned with how I work with people, because she's coming at it from an IFS, an internal family
Okay.
systems
Yeah.
angle. So if you are interested in the dynamics of how your non-monogamy journey interacts with all of your parts, this is a great interview. Like, dive into this and prepare yourself, because I think we're all going to be really excited when this book comes out. It adds to the conversation about how non-monogamy can be part of your psychological work over the course of your life. Whether you're really diving into your non-monogamy as an individuation journey or not, you're still here alive. So all of your relationships are part of how your psychology will unfold. So
Fantastic. Let's
okay,
get to it.
I don't think we have to go much further. Let me introduce Jessica Fern is a psychotherapist, a certified clinical trauma professional, and author of the book Polysecure: Attachment, Trauma, and Non-Monogamy, and the Polysecure Workbook. And in her international private practice, Jessica works with individuals, couples, people in multi-partner relationship configurations who no longer want to be limited by their reactive patterns, cultural conditioning, insecure attachment styles, and past traumas. She helps them embody new possibilities in life, love, and all things. You can learn more about her at jessicafern.com. And with that, let's get to the interview.
Mm.
Hi, Jessica. It's so nice to have you here.
Yes, thank you for having me.
I was really excited to talk to you for a lot of reasons. One is, anybody who can speak to polyamory at the depth that you do makes me really excited to talk to. But also because I know that you've been deep in writing mode, and I'm imagining that you have been turning over new stuff. You have these wonderful books. You have Polysecure and the Polysecure Workbook, but you also have your own work. And I'm guessing that that goes deeper and deeper. So I'm hoping we'll have a conversation today that goes wherever it needs to go today.
Yes, let's go beyond Polysecure.
Awesome. So just to start us off, I'm curious how you decided, like, what got you into the attachment theory lens as such a strong theoretical position for your book? Like, what inspired that?
Yeah. It felt like it came to me. In my graduate training, I was trained in grounded theory, right? Which is all about really listening to the data and seeing the patterns that emerge instead of imposing theory onto the data, right? So as I listened to why people were struggling or how they described their polyamorous struggles, I was like, oh, they're describing attachment ruptures, right? Like that's without them using the theoretical language, that was the experience they were describing. And then when I would bring some of that theory to those conversations, it just felt like it made so much sense to people. It felt like that was what was going on.
Yeah.
So it's sort of, my attempt at making sense of how do I support these people? How do I make sense of what they're going through? And attachment is sort of what we came to. And it makes sense from this perspective, from the experience of, especially if you're talking about people that have been monogamous and they're opening up. They've been in one primary attachment and now they're looking to form multiple attachments with other people, right? So it's like, oh, of course.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think first off, it makes perfect sense knowing now that you trained in grounded theory. So my own research, I used interpretative phenomenological analysis, but the other method I strongly looked at was grounded theory, and it makes so much sense to study all of non-monogamy from a grounded perspective because we don't know yet. We like the research is quickly growing, but it's nascent, so it makes sense to look at it from that perspective. You ask a question that I think my favorite perspective in the whole book, and this is saying a lot because I do really love the book, but you ask this question and you sort of iteratively unfold it for people. Do I want to be in an attachment relationship with this person?
Yeah.
Like, I feel like not everybody really is fully ready to grapple with the fact that not all relationships have to be attachment relationships, but it's so important.
It is important. Yeah, it is important.
So tell me, what do you do when somebody is currently they're in a relationship and they read your book or they come into your practice and they're like, you know what, I'm not sure we were ever really securely attached. I'm not sure we have that. I'm not even sure, maybe one of them isn't even sure that they want that.
Totally.
Because that feels like a different level of issue than, hey, how do we create a secure base? Like, let's go through the steps and make sure our base is solid.
Exactly. Right. If both partners or all partners, if it's multiple partners, want to have an attachment-based relationship, great. Right. I mean, in some ways it makes it so much easier because it's like, okay, here's some steps, here's some things to try, right? And usually when we have all parties willing and consenting to the depth of level that's required in more of an attachment-based relationship, things can shift. But when we have one or multiple people who don't want it and someone else does, there's a mismatch, right?
Yeah.
And it's okay that there's a mismatch. I think that's the beauty of non-monogamy is we don't all have to want the same thing,
Yeah.
Which
do you
is
treat that
explicit.
Yeah. Sorry for interrupting. Do you treat that a little bit like you might treat a desire mismatch then? Do you see that as an opportunity, or do you see that as maybe a place where they're coming to, oh, maybe we aren't fit to be partnered right now, or at least in this way? How do you look at it?
Yeah. I mean, I'll explore, is it that you don't want to be attachment-based partners? Do you not want to be a partners at all? Because sometimes there can still be a relationship and connection. It's just not as emotionally or logistically entwined.
Right.
Right. So really teasing apart what level does each person want? And even there, someone might say, well, I want, a more disconnected level. And the other person has the right to say, well, that's just not going to be enough for me.
Right. And then we're right back to some of the founding principles, that agency and autonomy and getting to consciously design your relationship, which is awesome. But I've noticed that some people, it's like it shines a light in a particularly tender area to say, oh, it's actually that we don't want the same kind of relationship, where they might have thought the polyamory was the issue. It might actually be the attachment level.
It could be the attachment level, exactly. Or often I see, just because 2 people or 3 people or 4 say they're non-monogamous does not mean they want the same kind of non-monogamy. And there's this non-monogamy style gap that I find, oh, wow, right? We really have someone over here who wants to be monogamish, doesn't really want to know much. And this other person is like kitchen table poly and like, it's not working, doesn't mean it can't, but like, right. Sometimes the styles are not as bridgeable as we would hope.
That's the right word, bridgeable. I'm loving that. When I'm doing my work with, especially in that moment where people are like, what happens now? And one of the obvious options feels like ending. We end this relationship. But you mentioned something so important, like we don't have to. What if we just completely redevelop it? And I'm curious, how does attachment theory work for you when one person is like anxiously or at least has tendencies toward that anxious attachment style?
Yeah.
And the other person might be more described as avoidant, but they just say, yeah, I'm not sure I don't know that I want to have an attachment oriented relationship. Like, because I feel like I get that as a bit of that can be a game all in itself, where now the anxious partner is like trying to convince you to engage at the attachment level.
Exactly. Yeah. Don't try to convince anyone to be with you.
We'll just, you know what? We'll just draw a box around that. Don't try to convince anyone to be with you.
No, don't, like, if you're spending your time convincing someone how to show up, that they should show up, that they want to show up, it's just like, there's other people out there who are going to want to be in a intimate attachment based relationship if that's what you want,
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah. And of course, the person that says they don't want it, I of course don't just stop. Okay, great. It's like, yes, explore that deeper. Why don't you want it? And what maybe do you not want about it? And maybe you do. And, give that some time to unpack. But if someone's truly saying, this isn't the level of relationship I want, then really honor and respect that.
Right. So there I'm hearing like there's a maybe a cooling off period where we learn about attachment theory and try to understand it, and we can start to cram people into boxes pretty hard.
Yeah.
And at that point, I find sometimes people are just trying so hard to have that attachment based relationship that they forget that they can reimagine. And maybe this isn't their attachment figure in their adulthood. Perhaps we go a whole other way with this. Maybe we enter into some other alignment.
Yeah.
Which is beautiful.
And sometimes even with the same two people, it's really about timing, like you take a break or a pause, and a year later, like you're now more in a compatible place, so it's,
that actually just really hit for me. Like, revisiting, which is all about ending well, which is one of the things that having a discussion like this can get you. Like the why behind choosing to end or take a pause is so important. If you can establish the why, then it stops being a personal attack, and now there's more potential. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. So I was talking with a group. In my groups, everybody loves your book. I've never had anybody not say like, oh yeah, that was one of the top 3 books I had to read. And there was a question that surfaced that I thought was really, really interesting, because I think you might get pigeonholed a little bit too, which is into like Jessica Fern and attachment theory.
Right.
But they were just curious what other theories you might hold alongside that. What else do you like to bring into your own either your own relationships or your own practice?
Totally. Great question. Well, and in the book, people might not be registering it, but I mean, I'm using a lot of narrative therapy, and I do name narrative therapy, right? So that's one of my loves, but really IFS, internal family systems, is an enormous love of mine. And in my next book, I sort of get into when like troubleshooting, when you have someone who is struggling with, do they want to do non-monogamy or not? And one of the whole things I go through is like, which parts of you don't want to do non-monogamy, to explore this at a parts level. And it's incredible. I mean, sometimes it's 5, 6, 8 parts that are protesting non-monogamy. I mean, I've really seen like, wow. And when people do more IFS-based work, they can then at least decide, okay, the self does not want to do non-monogamy, which is very different than my reactive wounded parts or protector parts, protesting this. Yeah. Or they work through their parts and then they're like, oh, I am able to give this a try.
Yeah. Oh, Well, now I understand why our alignment is so strong, because so coming from a Jungian psychology background, IFS is really just like a modernized version of complex theory.
Yeah.
So it's so similar. And I have to agree that when you start breaking into the parts and start helping people really reparent their parts and allow them to have a voice, I've noticed that some people, they have this dynamic especially in group relationships where we have like, it's complex already because there's 3-4 parts going on. And now everybody's got their parts. Now we're talking about like campfire situation here. You've got 20 different entities have sort of entered the chat. It's a beautiful theoretical perspective from my position, but I know sometimes people find it disorienting to be like, what do you mean I have all of this going on in me? Why can't I just be one thing? Do you balance that some with the narrative therapy, like, and just allowing the narrative work to just ground them in what their story is now?
Totally. Yeah. And IFS really itself, it's looking at like, there is the wholeness of self that has these multiple parts, right?
Yeah.
So it's sort of not either or. It's like embracing multiplicity and also embracing like the unification of all of that and the unification of self.
I'm super excited. I'm even more excited to see your new book come out now, because I feel like it's as though Polysecure brought us all to a place where we wanted to have this conversation. And now there's more to be had, because once you start creating that secure base, do you find that people struggle to maintain it over time? Because I'm seeing it's like we're willing to put the work in up front. Like, let's develop that secure base, but then there's life.
Yeah. And I'm not sure that's much different from monogamy or non-monogamy. I mean, that's sort of a main complaint too in long-term monogamous relationships, is sort of like, oh, right, everyone put their best foot forward, like when the hormones are strong, right? And now that we've sealed the deal with whatever form that is of structure, we get complacent, we take each other for granted, we don't try in the same way, But yes, then in non-monogamy, there's other layers of we're having new relationship energy with other people. And then our long-term partners can feel really left behind, And we have to remember like, oh, I have to be putting it like, and that's what I talk about too, is really gauging how available and how saturated are you, because can you maintain the level of quality that each relationship requires?
Right. That's been such an important part for myself. I have 7 children. So obviously, right? So
I'd be single, right?
Right, exactly. I mean, honestly, sometimes an anchor partner is a lot.
Right.
When people ask me how I juggle it all, I'm like, well, one of the ways is by really monitoring my capacity. And a lot of the time, I am only available for sort of lightweight dating. I'm available for that, and I'm available for depth of friendship, but I have to be really, really careful and let people know what I'm available for, because realistically, I'm saturated right from the get-go.
Totally.
And then negotiating with people who are I find people who are in different phases of if they're doing the parenting thing, depending on what phase you're in. Because my kids are now, the baby's about to get his license. So 7 kids, but now they're grown. Right. It's totally different. When I was first opening up and my baby was still breastfeeding, it's just a whole different world. Now I'm just noticing the alignment here. I was working so hard on their attachment, on my children's attachment to me, and to showing up and attempting to be sure I was creating that secure base for them.
Totally.
It was a challenge to be out there in the world offering that to other people. It was an intense challenge.
Absolutely. I mean, I remember the hardest thing about dating was the first time I had a sleepover, and it was the first night I wasn't there, like in my son's life, like that was what was hard. Right? Yeah.
Like, oh, my nesting partner might be fine. They've got
my partner's fine, or they'll be fine, or we can process through it. But like, is my 3-year-old okay? Like for me to go away for one night.
Right. Which then of course brings up all the stuff, all the parental guilt issues and all of that. And for me, I also think that I noticed this with clients, people who processed through their parenting journey are actually pretty well situated. They're like, oh, this isn't that different. And I
Yeah,
think, to your point, like, yeah, because they're more attachment relationships.
exactly.
If that's what we're building,
Yeah.
and you practiced building that thoughtfully with children, more practice is more practice. That's just food for thought. I'm gonna have to percolate on that for longer.
Yes.
So, Jessica, my academic research is in jealousy. So, like, I specialize in jealousy. So, I gotta ask you,
Of course.
yeah, I want to find out, what's it like for you to be working through jealousy from that attachment perspective? Because I have a slightly different background and perspective. I
Right.
add in attachment theory. Tell me how just the topic. I want to just like rip the band-aid off. Let's
Yeah.
talk about jealousy.
Let's talk about jealousy. That's great. Yes. Yeah, I love jealousy. I think it's
Okay, you know what? That's it. That's all I needed to hear. No, I'm kidding.
We're done.
So when I tell people that I'm a jealousy enthusiast,
Yeah.
oftentimes I get like full jaw drop, even from my peers and professionals. They're like, really? But that's like the worst part.
I know.
But I was curious. I thought you might have a different take on it because jealousy is so informative.
It is. Yeah, it's so informative. And I think when we learn not to be afraid of it, not to exile our jealous parts, right? It's such a messenger, and to really take it in as a messenger.
Right.
Right. And there's different levels that it's usually pointing to. Right. So I've said this in other presentations, but looking at jealousy, it's the messenger at the level of like me, we, or society, right?
Yeah.
Just to rhyme, right? And make it easy. So the me is the individual level of like, oh, when I'm jealous, is this just in my own insecurity, right? I never got that degree, and that partner you're dating got that degree, or I don't have red hair and they have red hair, like, right? It has really nothing to do with the relationship. It's really more about my personal insecurity, whatever it is,
Right.
And that's an opportunity though, of, oh, there's certain wounds here, or narratives and stories about myself, right? Or conditioning culturally and societally that I'm still struggling with, that now I have an opportunity to explore.
Right. Yeah. So when I'm sorting jealousy and envy for people, I'm always like, I'm always asking, like, yeah, if you're comparing yourself to a Metamour,
exactly.
I get it. Jealousy may absolutely be present. You might be feeling that threat, but if you're comparing yourself directly to a Metamour, you got envy just mixed all in there. And now it's so hard to take them apart.
Yeah.
Even though envy has its own wisdom and its own way of instructing us, like where the wound is, or where we might just need to do some deep, like reckoning with, do I even want that? Or have I been conditioned to want it? Right.
Yeah.
But sorting them apart, because I notice so many people, like they turn their attention to their Metamour instead of focusing on the relationship that they're in, especially if they have a parallel polyamory situation going on. They're like, it's just easy. It's easier, I think, to imagine, oh, this is a terrible sentence. I'm going to say it anyways. It's easier to imagine my own unlovableness or unwantableness than to actually stay with my feelings of threat and having to negotiate that with you. Like if I'm used to discounting myself or thinking I'm less than, it's sort of comforting in a way.
Yeah. No, I think you're absolutely right. Like, as strange as it sounds, sometimes it's easier for people to go the shame route and like the lack of self-worth route than to actually address or face or like go into the relational realm.
Right.
Yeah.
We have this beautiful opportunity in that moment to both end the situation. Like
exactly.
Yeah. Like,
and that's one of the problems you see, is that, people go too quickly sometimes to just blaming, actually, like, oh, you're jealous, it's your shit, go deal with it alone.
yeah.
It's like, wait. Jealousy is a social emotion, right? It's not an individual like experience, right? And so often it needs to be tended to and cared for relationally.
Right. I'm seeing that in communities too. Like there's this some whole like local communities or even online communities that have bonded and they have a nice, there's like a firm structure holding them together. some of them have sort of outcast jealousy. Like
Yeah.
we're just gonna disown it, which we know what happens to those parts.
Right.
We disown them. And I always say, I'm like, it's like holding a beach ball underwater. It's gonna
Yeah.
pop back up. We just don't know where. But then there are others who really have moved toward like incorporating talk about jealousy. I feel like that's where the growing edge is. If we talk about jealousy as a social emotion, as an opportunity to know each other better.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not just the any dyadic connection that can get better, but the whole community can become more supportive.
Totally.
It's not simple though, because I literally had somebody just yesterday say that they went to a Metamour. They were having all kinds of feelings and they thought, okay, I'm just going to address this head on. They showed up and they said, so here's what I'm feeling. And the instant response was, that's a you problem. I don't want to take care of you.
Mm.
And when they relayed this to me, I had a full body reaction of like, oh, that doesn't feel friendly to me. And this is where I feel like we've gotten so crisp on let's set boundaries that
totally we then miss the relationship.
Right.
Right.
Which doesn't have to be that romantic connection. Like,
right.
We're in community. It's so
exactly right. Yeah. Even just to say thank you for sharing. What are you hoping that I will do in response? Like even that is a relational stance. So instead of, oop, that just sounds like your shit, go away, basically. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And when I was researching jealousy, one of the things that hid in the corner of almost every single interview I've done is there's like shame hiding behind all of the other emotions. There's lots of emotions that come with it. And then there's shame. And the more intensely involved in a non-monogamous community people were, the louder that shame was for many of them, because they had like drawn a box around jealousy and said, I should get over this, or it should reduce. I should not have to deal with it at the same intensity.
Yeah, exactly.
Good. Great big
exactly. Yeah, exactly. Right. That the idea that you're good or bad at polyamory, and that has to do with how much jealousy you do or don't have, and that's just a myth. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So then let's look at that from an attachment lens.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's something sort of convenient going on when we look at jealousy through the attachment lens, right? Because you have, on the one hand, we have people who are anxious tendency. They know that and they're like, yeah, jealousy comes up for me.
Yeah.
And then we have folks who are more avoidant. And I have a large number of them who've passed through my doors, and they're certain they don't feel jealous. They've never felt jealous. But when we look at their attachment tendencies, we see this like deep avoidance and disconnection.
Yeah.
And I'm always suspicious there. And suspicious in a good way, though. It feels like this is their growing edge to me.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Are you?
Because their growing edge, for someone that's in the avoidant dismissive style, the growing edge is allowing your longing for the other. Right? You're right. You can't feel jealousy until you admit I have a longing for the other. Right. And then, right. So it's almost like jealousy would come down the road of that allowance of, I want the other. I even need the other. Right.
Right. Needing.
Yeah. Needing. It's huge, right? To allow oneself to be that vulnerable, to long. So that's what the avoidant dismissive style, that's their growth. And what I see is two things. Once they, grow into that space, jealousy then shows up, and it feels really healthy. It's like, oh, this is a good sign, I also see like, just wait. Like anyone who has said that I've ever known who said they've never been jealous or rarely do, it's like, just wait. And the right situation eventually comes along and there's some jealousy,
Right. I always say, well, you're not dead yet. So there's still time.
Exactly.
Don't worry. You'll get to it. It's fine.
Exactly. Yeah.
Just like all other emotions. I mean, I'm on a bit of a mission with jealousy because I really think it's been cast aside the same way anger was for a period of time. Like, let's just no 1950s housewife was supposed to experience anger.
Exactly.
That didn't go well.
Right. Exactly.
So, and how beautiful that this particular relationship style invites jealousy through the door and just says, well, it's likely to come up, if not in you, in your partners. And that's the other place that I see people struggle, that difference. Like if I'm not experiencing it, what if somebody else is?
Totally. And I think maybe the important distinction for people to have is like, there's nothing wrong with your jealousy. And there's a difference between experiencing and feeling jealousy and acting out of jealousy. Right. And that is what we want to prevent, right? Don't be acting out of your jealousy and reacting on to partners and metamours in harmful ways.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's what's hard. People have conflated those two. So just, the reaction is bad. Therefore, the feeling must be bad too.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. When you imagine that the size of the reaction, even though in my research, like jealousy it's spotted so early, we can spot it at 5-6 months old. So of course the reaction is going to feel outsized.
Yeah.
But then now we're adults. We have the capacity to hold a big emotion. But something else that's interesting is it is rare for me to come across somebody who says that they were taught anything about dealing with jealousy at all.
Yeah.
Like it's only happened one time. Thousands of conversations. One time somebody said, oh yeah, I remember like learning about how to deal with jealousy. I think it'll be different in the next generation of children, but we're talking about emotions differently, which is awesome. But there's another aspect of jealousy that I'd like to touch on, and I'm curious what you think about it. There are these different ways that jealousy comes up for people who are practicing polyamory. And one of them I've heard called justice jealousy. Right?
That's my term.
That's your term, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So tell me more about how you spotted justice jealousy, and because this isn't in my research at all. So I want to hear direct from the source.
Yes. And so in my next book, we go into the story of when I discovered it. Because the next book I co-wrote with David Cooley, who we've been different iterations of different kind of partnerships for 20 years. And we were married and we were opening up. And, so justice jealousy is when you're in a partnership and you come to accept there's just certain things I'm not going to get from my partner. And you accept though, because it's just kind of not who they are.
Right? Sure. They don't talk that much, or they don't plan dates, or
whatever. They just don't do those things. That's not who they are. And yet I love them and it's worth staying with them. And, the acceptance, the reckoning of just like, yeah, there's certain things I'll never get. And then you open up and they are suddenly doing all of those things for someone else.
Large yikes.
Yes. Right. And you're like, what? Like, what? So I tell this story of just wanting Dave to initiate, and we tell this story together. So it's, you
fair
get
game.
Sides, right? It's fair game of really wanting him to initiate more like date nights. And I'm just like, we don't even have to spend money. It can be a picnic on the beach, like, but just you plan an experience for me, like how meaningful that would be and how frequently I was in that role. And then just, okay, that's not what Dave's good at. He's great at other things. I'm just not going to get that. And then we open up and he realizes like, oh, I'm not going to get any partners unless I initiate experiences. Right. And suddenly he has like this capacity and this skill set that literally never existed before. And so it's not that I didn't want him or that partner to have those experiences. I did. I genuinely had even compersion for them. But personally, it's like the injustice, right? Yeah. That like, I've been wanting this from you for years. And so then it's not really jealousy. It's more of this hurt, right? Of like, oh, it's so hurtful. It's such a rejection.
Yeah. So I resonate so much with that. And interestingly, from my first marriage, which was monogamous, but I saw this same capacity awaken in him. And it was about initiation of experiences specifically. So for him, it was just friendships. And it was actually his guy friends, right? But we were a good 10, 12 years in when I realized, he can do that and he just won't point it at me. And inside the container of our monogamy, there was like no way to complain about it. There was like, I could crab about it. I could like vent to friends about it. But everybody in my monogamous circles, it seemed like experienced the same thing.
Yep.
And then I became non-monogamous. And all of a sudden there was this way to see it as a highlight that then actually there was a reason to talk it through, a reason to process it through, because without that firm boundary of like, well, you're stuck with me, without
Totally.
that, like, it really changes it. So now when I notice it happen, and when I see it happen for my clients, we're like, oh, it's highlighting something that you want. Cool. Have you actually expressed that you want it? Like recently? Because
Right.
sometimes we gave up so long ago.
Right.
And then our partner has changed and grown. Have we renegotiated for that? And I find that that's often a missing ingredient, because there's this like old anger around
Yeah,
having asked for it years ago.
exactly. And like given up on it yourself.
Yeah.
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 I appreciate that of, have you asked recently? Yeah.
Yeah.
And sometimes it might be that like you haven't been asking at all or recently, you know. And sometimes it just purely is, wow, this has been relational neglect. Like,
Right.
this is neglect.
Right. And so in that case, so I've noticed that there are people who really struggle to recognize that. In particular, I see this with people who are in a pretty uh, cis het mononormative looking situation, and then they open, and especially if they have children in a house and they have all the things, all the accoutrement that make them look like they have one life, they open up and they see this other side of their partner available. The wound is deep, but then the walking back
Yeah.
into it is also really intense. And one of the resounding complaints has been from the partner who wasn't providing that stuff, whatever it was, let's say the initiation, was that wasn't part of the deal. Like, yeah, we had our arrangement. I don't want to change our arrangement, which of course now they've entered I mean,
Right.
all relationships are negotiable. But there's also this like, I'm sure you'll get it when I say this. If it was the partner who is complaining, who initiated opening up, I
Yeah.
find that the partner who's like been exposed for having these new qualities is often now like, well, you wanted to open up.
Totally.
You brought this on yourself. So,
Yeah.
and it just feels like it's like, I just feel like it's layering on. It's like hurt, salt, lemon
Now
juice.
some blame thrown in there. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think of this hot potato we're tossing back and forth, like, oh, this is your fault. No, it's my fault. Like, and we're back and forth. Is there something that you recommend people do to stop that intense trajectory when you see it?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, I mean, it's just initially calling out like blame's not going to get us anywhere. I mean, it's just going to dig you further and further into a hole or further apart, you know?
Yeah.
And so, and really having to say, okay, we can argue about what the relationship was and what the agreements were of all these years that you were together. Like, okay, here, what are you wanting now? You know?
Yeah.
And it's, and is it compatible now? You know, and
Great
this is what is hard about opening up is you start to have people who are willing to give you things you haven't gotten maybe ever or in years, and they can become a game-changing situation.
Right.
You
And now we
know?
have to get real about the fact that it was an illusion. It was an
Yeah.
illusion that we couldn't have this need met. We couldn't, it wasn't met
Right.
in the scenario we had, but it was the illusion that the monogamy created, that,
Yeah.
oh, I can't get that need, want, or desire met. But now I can. And now I find that I have to help people really remember that they've entered a full renegotiation. Like,
Exactly.
we really have to give it space and time. Like, I don't let people work with me for less than a year, because I'm like, we need time to like air this out. And
Yeah.
it's just there will be all these layers.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's sort of having hard conversations of like, do you want to be with this person today, who they are
Now.
who they are now? And, you know, if your partner is saying to you that they need certain things from you, like just like lowering the defenses, are those things you actually want to give? Are they things you're capable of giving?
Right. I see certainly plenty of people were like, oh, I could. I just don't want to because now I'm mad. And now we're locked.
In
And now
resentment and posturing, right?
yep.
Exactly.
And now we might as well head toward Gottman's route and be like, oh, now we've got contempt in the room. Now we've got, you know, we're in the same position. It doesn't really matter which relationship structure we've aligned with.
Yeah.
The ending point could be that we just won't unpack the resentment and the contempt and the discomfort of, hey, this is a change.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny, you're reminding me, like, for some people, the stigma of opening up is still less than the stigma of divorce.
Right.
You know?
I see that, especially as more conservative circles are opening up. I live in a red dot in a blue state.
Mm-hmm.
More people who would typically be more conservative, more religious, and more, they're like, they would not, divorce is not an option.
Right.
Opening can be negotiated. I've actually worked with several people who are like, actually, if I look to my biblical texts, I can find, like, this is fine. I can make space for opening.
Oh, wow.
But divorce feels very, like, they really don't want that. But it puts them in that same tough position of, but do I want to be married to someone who is locked in, like, we're locked horns in this battle of animosity, and no matter where else I'm getting my needs met, do I want that to be my day to day as well?
Totally. Yeah. Exactly.
That's it. It's a big question. Okay. You have a great model. I love a good acronym, and you have the HEARTS acronym to talk about how people can identify those core skills of having an attachment relationship, or at least that's how I understand HEARTS. And the thing I love the most, and what I wanted to ask you about, is that when you make the shift, you're introducing HEARTS in the book, and I want everybody to go back and refresh. Go reread the HEARTS chapter, because it's always a good refresher. I just refreshed for myself. But when you then say, okay, we want to put these things in our relationship, and then you make this crucial shift and you say, and now you need to heart yourself. Now, like, and that to me feels so in alignment with IFS techniques, with Jungian theory. Like, we've got to be able to have access to that capital S self. And in order to do that, we have to make the same moves that we would of other intimacy. So I'm curious about there's one particular letter. It's T. Mm-hmm. You write turning toward after conflict. And I was thinking about what it's like to turn toward at myself after conflict, but also what it's like to turn toward myself when I'm shaming myself, when I'm like really like negative self-talk, I'm aggressive. What's your go-to move to get back from that?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, of course, I have another book that I will be writing on shame and the inner critic. And so often, and the ways we escape. And I think I'll be calling it the shame triangle, like inspired by the drama triangle, but the internalized drama triangle, right? And so, shame work is hard. And we have to devote, I think, to it as work that we take on, you know? Because if we don't do it with care, it can create a lot of backfire, right? And yet when I say that, I don't want people to be afraid of it either, you know, but we have to look at this as a multi-part inner system, like, of the criticalness, of the traumas that we've gone through, you know, of the experiences that have brought on shame. So I mean, honestly, shame work is usually trauma work, right?
Call a spade a spade. It is.
It is, right? Whether it was relational trauma, societal, cultural trauma, you know.
Right. And my own take on it is I can create my own trauma inside. Like we're complicated creatures.
We are capable of self-harm, right?
Right. I can absolutely be caught in my own web of, this part of me is harming this other part, especially a young part that doesn't have a good defense system. And that can become incredibly tangled. Like, now who's hurting me? And it's so easy to project that out onto a partner. And at that point, I mean, it's really deep work. Obviously, if this is resonating, it's time to look for your helpers.
And I feel like shame work is some of the deepest, like, it's usually the bottom of a lot of the work, right? The wounds that created the shame that is been a byproduct of certain experiences. Yeah.
And then the story we make around it to protect ourselves.
And the story, exactly. And my sort of stance is that until we start that work, it doesn't mean we never experience shame, but until we start working with that part of ourselves, we're not able to live authentically.
Yeah, that's right. Absolutely. I'm thinking about how in the drama triangle, so I always talk about jealousy as a triangle too. Triangles are just so dynamic. Like and archetypally, like triangles are it's the dynamic motion of a shape, right? That's it. But when I think about the drama triangle, I'm always so interested to see how we hop into it at one place. You know, we hop in at persecutor, or we hop in at victim. And shame absolutely feels that way. It has that energy where like I can hop in at any point, but boy, I can beat myself up from every angle.
Right. And it's really sort of a deflated narcissism, because when we're in shame, it's like, oh, everything out there is evidence that I'm not okay, not enough, not lovable, a piece of crap, you know, like, and you're like, whoa, the whole world isn't about you.
Yes. Yeah. I had a wonderful analyst who said, like narcissism's fine, but don't like, it should be a healthy amount in both directions. In both directions. Do not turn that on yourself. That was a groundbreaking moment for me, because I was caught in my own shame story, having not come out well, having met the world poorly that way. It's fascinating to think about how your work will now layer together. There's this, it's interesting that you met the world with this security, like finding the safe haven and providing that, I think, for a lot of people. You provided that by just giving them language and helping. I mean, honestly, I had to read a lot of Freud and Jung and everybody else since, every attachment theorist since. You do a great job of making attachment theory useful, like today, making it useful. It's just fantastic. I love it. But now I'm really intrigued to see how you're going to take this into the deeper layers. And I'm so grateful. So grateful. Thank you so much. Jessica, would you just tell everybody, like, I mean, obviously, everybody grab your copy of Polysecure and the Polysecure workbook.
Yes.
Where can people find you? What would you like people to know next?
Yeah, they can go to my website, jessicafern.com. I'm not big on social media, but I'll send out newsletters if like events are coming up or things like that, or if I have different kind of offerings that I'm doing. So that's the best way to stay in touch, you know.
Awesome.
And then hopefully by the fall, Polywise will be coming out, and that is sort of, you know, the next wave of what my offering for non-monogamy. Yeah.
Wonderful. I'm thrilled, and thank you for sharing a little bit about where the work's headed. I think it's really exciting, and I know my listeners, they intentionally are using non-monogamy as part of their individuation path.
Yeah,
like that's
what whole chapter on codependency and individuation in the next.
It's like that's what we want. So thank you for moving the needle, for taking this conversation deeper. I just appreciate it so much, and thank you for joining me today.
Yes, thank you. It's wonderful talking with you.
There's no one right way to design your relationship. And lots of people, actually about 25%, according to a recent national survey, are interested in some type of open relationship. But how do you know if you are ready to open up happily? Not everyone is, and that's no problem. I've got a 60-second quiz that will give you the answer. And even better, you'll walk away with your next step, whether you're good to go or not so much when it comes to opening up. And this is no BuzzFeed nonsense. I personally designed this quiz from my years of academic research. Go to joliquiz.com. That's JOLIQUIZ.com, and find out if you're ready to open up happily and what to do if you are or if you're not.